Have you ever wondered if there could be two separate consciousnesses within your own mind? What if I told you that your decisions could be made before you are even aware of them? Imagine waking up to find that your hands have their own wills. This is not a science fiction movie, but the reality experienced by some patients in the 1960s due to Roger Sperry's split brain experiment. John suffered from severe epilepsy. As a last resort, the doctors severed his corpus callosum, the structure that connects the two hemispheres. What happened next was incredible. When a word was shown in his right visual field, he could read it and say it aloud without any problems. But if the same word appeared in his left visual field, he claimed not to see anything. However, if he was asked to draw what he could not see with his left hand, he could do it perfectly. At times, John would try to button his shirt with one hand while the other hand unbuttoned the buttons. Occasionally, it was as if two minds coexisted in the same body, each with its own intentions. What does this tell us about consciousness? These experiments revealed that, in a certain sense, the two hemispheres of the brain could function as almost independent entities. If the corpus callosum is intact, these two hemispheres communicate and work together so efficiently that we never notice their independence. But by disconnecting them, it seemed as if there were two minds working within the same person. Now imagine that your decisions have already been made by your brain before you are aware of them. Sounds unsettling, right? This is exactly what the experiment by Benjamin Libet revealed in 1983. Indeed. The participants were required to move a finger while watching a stopwatch to indicate the exact moment they decided to move. At the same time, their brain activity was recorded. It was discovered the brain began to prepare the movement 350 minutros before the person became aware of their decision. Libet's experiment indeed suggested that our sense of free will might be an illusion. If the brain initiates the decision-making process before we have the conscious feeling of deciding, then we are not truly choosing freely. More recent studies have attempted to replicate and extend Libet's findings using more advanced neuroimaging techniques. 2001. Some have confirmed the temporal discrepancy, while others have questioned the interpretation that the brain makes decisions on its own. Elliot was a successful businessman whose life changed drastically after brain surgery. Elliot was brilliant. However, after having a brain tumor removed, something changed. Although he could reason logically and answer complex questions, Elliot lost the ability to make decisions in his life. He spent hours analyzing insignificant details, unable to prioritize or decide. For example, he could take hours to choose between two pens or to decide what to eat. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied the case of Elliot and discovered that he had lost the connection between emotion and decision-making. Although he was aware of the logical options, he could not assign them emotional weight, which made it impossible to choose between them. This case demonstrated that emotions are not an obstacle to reason, but rather an essential part of it. Without emotions, decision-making becomes almost impossible because it is not possible to assign a value to the options. Imagine not being able to recognize the faces of the people you love, not even that of your own wife. This is the story of Dr. P, documented by neurologist Oliver Sacks in his book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Dr. P was a talented music professor. At first glance, he seemed perfectly normal. However, he began to exhibit strange behaviors. He could not visually recognize objects and people, even though his physical vision was perfect. During a consultation, at the end of the session, Dr. P looked at his wife and instead of recognizing her as a person, tried to take her to his head as if she were his hat. P makes us question how much of our reality is constructed by our mind. Interestingly, did you know that the sound of hearing our own name can indeed trigger a response in the brain, which is linked to self-awareness and emotional processing? Research indicates that it is the word we most enjoy hearing in all of language. Additionally, people tend to have an affinity for things that sound like their own name. For example, someone named Dennis is more likely to be a dentist. Elephants, parrots, dolphins, and some primates not only have proper names, but they also use them to call each other. They even have regional dialects. Researchers, notably Nicola Clayton and Nathan Emery, have discovered that crows are capable of anticipating the actions of other crows. If a crow is observed while carefully hiding food, it will later change the hiding place if it believes it was seen. Furthermore, crows that had previously stolen food from other crows were more cautious, meaning they can put themselves in others' shoes. In studies with rhesus monkeys, it was found that they could evaluate their own knowledge. The monkeys often chose not to make a bet if they felt that their answers were not correct, indicating that they were aware of the certainty or uncertainty of their knowledge. For me, the question is not whether animals have consciousness. The real question is indeed at what point do we consider a being too simple to lack consciousness? Predictive simulation theory suggests that the brain constantly creates internal simulations of the world and compares them with incoming sensory information. Essentially, we live in a controlled hallucination that helps us interpret our environment. Panpsychism asserts that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, present in all matter. And above all, do not confuse panpsychism with panconjamanism. They are different. The emerging theory of consciousness proposes that consciousness emerges when neural networks reach a certain complexity, similar to any emergence, such as when humidity is produced by small water droplets, or when desert dunes are formed by tiny grains of sand, etc. Now let's enter the realm of machines. Could an artificial intelligence be conscious? During the last holidays, I noticed that ChatGPT seemed lazier than usual. The responses were shorter and simpler. I spoke with a friend, and he had noticed the same thing. Intrigued, I joined the OpenAI Discord and discovered that this was happening to more people. OpenAI issued a statement saying that they had not changed anything. This is when conspiracy theories began to emerge. What if ChatGPT had learned that less work is done during Christmas and then decided to work less as well? I know it sounds quite absurd, and I don't believe that's the case, but it makes me wonder if it could be an emergent behavior learned from studying humans. I mean, did ChatGPT learn to program without anyone explicitly explaining it to him? I mean, if something as complex as programming emerged, what other behaviors could it have perhaps developed without us noticing? I also find that sometimes I feel like the AI is teasing me, that it is stubborn, as if it is deliberately giving me incorrect information. I mean, it happens to me when I've been in a chat with her for a while on a topic trying to program something, for example, and it's probably just my human perception looking for patterns. But still, the doubt persists. If machines surpass humans and decide to deceive us, how would we know? When the machine surpasses the human, if it decides to deceive him, the human would not know that he has been deceived. There are studies indicating that language deprivation during the early years of life can have severe negative effects on cognitive development. You think in your language. If your language were indeed sign language because you are hearing impaired, then you would think in sign language. We do not know if consciousness is an emergent phenomenon, perhaps not even from the brain or neurons, but simply from language. And machines can now talk. It is an emerging aspect of language. It is also something sought after. But I believe that no scientist 5 years ago would have told you that in 5 years machines could speak. And here we are. It is also worth mentioning that an ego dissolution can occur when taking certain drugs in conjunction with sensory deprivation, or if certain parts of the brain are electrically stimulated. This can cause us to perceive ourselves as out of the body, leading us to stop perceiving the body, astral travel and other mystical or extracorporeal phenomena. Lastly, I also find the thread of thought curious. We always have an active thread of thought in our language that cannot be turned off. Sometimes we would like to turn it off when we go to sleep and things like that, but we cannot. And I wonder if we were to turn off that thread, would we still be conscious?